am Shantay Robinson, Education's Program Manager at MCM, and tonight we're in for a real treat. This is something that uh, we don't typically hear about. We've had journalists at our PROTALKS, and we know little bit about journalism, but social media strategy is something that's pretty new to the field. So we'll be learning. We'll get learning a little bit about what's new in media that many of us might not know about. So I'm going to read our speaker's bio. She is a digital storyteller, a media strategist with 20 years of experience in journalism. Her career was born in television newsrooms and has taken her from news radio to a network startup and beyond. She helps brands break through the internet's noise and weave their stories into engaging and easily digestible online content. She takes a cutting edge approach with the latest social media platforms and trends to position brands to get their messages across to a wider audience. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree in broadcast journalism from SI Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University, a Telly Award winner. She has worked as a news writer, segment producer, field producer, and social media manager for a number of clients ranging from major TV news outlets in the Washington, D.C. area to the Department of Defense. Yolanda serves on the supervisory committee of the Signal Financial Credit Union Board and has previously served on the board of Women in Film and Video DC. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the National Association of Black Journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome social media strategist Yolanda Arrington. Thank you so much for being with us, Yolanda. How are you tonight?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to speak with everyone, and I'm here to be as helpful as I can and answer any questions I can.
Okay, but before we get into talking to you and asking any questions, I want to show you all a sample of Yolanda's work. I'm going to share my screen again.
It's your girl, Ina. Check it, check it, check it, check it. Check it, check it, check it, check it, check it, check it, check it. Check it, check it, check it, check it, check it, check it, check it. Check it, check it, check it.
A lot of the experiences that I've gone through in my time in service taught me first and foremost a lot about like leadership. I felt like I learned how to, in a professional setting, command a group or teach a class and do it with confidence and not feel nervous. I did this makeup tutorial years ago and basically like how to wear makeup in regulations, because what I wanted to basically show is that like, look, people in the Army are normal people just like you. There's musicians, there's photographers, like there's industry people that do makeup just like me that also put on a uniform and serve their country. And that was a really cool, relatable way of showing like I'm a normal person. I do a really unique job, but I'm a normal person just like you. I definitely learned a lot about challenging myself. I didn't know if I would fail. I didn't know if I would succeed, but like at the time it didn't matter to me. And a lot of that is reflective of my job now, and that, you know, with social media, like you don't know if you're gonna make money tomorrow. You don't know if you're gonna be relevant in 2 years.
Maybe I'll see you in the next video.
At the end of the day, like I'm just looking at it from like, what do I have to lose? You know, what do I have to lose? People are obviously watching me because they value my opinion, and I should use that influence responsibly. I've had some amazing experiences in 2018. I got to collaborate with Too Faced. I got to expand their Born This Way line of foundations.
It's finally here. My Too Faced collab is finally here.
I created 9 new shades, and they were global, worldwide, Australia to Newark, New Jersey. They were everywhere. So that was an amazing opportunity because it was like the first time I really got to see on a large level partnership that like my influence meant something.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel.
Needless to say, 2018 was about sowing seeds, and 2019 is about like watching them grow and flourish and multiply. This is Jackie Ina, and you're watching Know Your Mill.
So what part of the production did you play in that video?
So I am a contractor for the Department of Defense currently, and so I work on the social media team. And at that time, there was a big initiative to do something called Know Your Military, or Know Your Mill for short, which was an effort to show the 90+% of the population that has no military connection, no military tie, no service history, to show them that you can be a regular person, you can have other jobs, you can have hobbies and interests and still be in the military. And so that was a profile that I pitched on Jackie Ina, who is a huge beauty influencer. And we wanted to showcase, you know, what she learned during her time in the Army, and how she was able to take those lessons and turn them into the work that she's doing now, with beauty brands, expanding her own brand. At the time, when we shot that, we were, you know, in her home. I mean, she's since moved to an even bigger place, but at the time we were in her home. She was buying the next floor under her, the next a unit in the floor under her to expand her office. It was like she was really on the cusp of really blowing up. And now she's, you know, she's since then she's started a candle line and has other endeavors that she's done with other brands. But my responsibility at the time, I pitched it and I had to kind of fight for it, because I think, you know, when you're working with people who may not necessarily know about a lot of social media or about the influence of people on social media, kind of had to fight for, you know, flying us out to LA where she's based and doing that story. And so I did the pitch, I did just the general, you know, background information, the questions, the flow of the script. I worked with a really great videographer and editor who he's in the Navy. We work with uniformed military members. So he's in the Navy and he's a public affairs officer. And so we just coordinated. And it's helpful too when you work with someone who is also familiar with social media and also kind of familiar with the culture, and you know, we bounced ideas off of each other. And we not only did that video, but we did short snippets that appeared on the defense.gov website. And we created kind of a somewhat of an interactive web page for that story. So as you were watching it, there was video that played on the page, you know, in the background. So it was sort of a moving page. And then it went to the other snippets of other topics that she talked about as well. So it was a really interesting project.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So how did you get to this point? Because I know you started in journalism, but how did you get to social media strategist?
So I started when I left Syracuse. I started out as an intern at ABC. I worked on, I was an intern at the House Radio TV Gallery, actually. And then from there, I met someone that worked at ABC who pulled me over to ABC and got me in the door. And I worked just from ABC Radio. I worked in a News Channel 8 newsroom here in the DC area, and just sort of was moving along as a writer, as a producer. And somewhere I would say maybe about 2006, between 2006, 2009, somewhere in there, it became really clear that viewers as well as the industry were really starting to tilt more to the internet and then ultimately social media. And so it became clear that it was really time for me to start looking in that direction, that being in a newsroom or having newsroom skills just wasn't enough, that I had to learn more and I had to know how to not only create content for TV, but that same content had to find its place online and eventually in social media. And so I ended up working at a startup network called Retirement Living TV. It goes by RLTV. It was a network that was for people 50, 55 plus, addressing issues related to people who were about to retire, thinking of it, and then people who had retired. But in the process of working there, because it was a startup, there were opportunities to do so many things. And so we worked on a show, and the show was like a daily talk show, and we had all kinds of segments and guests. And I was like, okay, well, we can put some of this online. And so that's what we started to do, was put these things
In this video, I'm
online
going to teach you how to
and,
properly put in a tampon.
put,
So if you are new
the
to
content
using a
online,
tampon,
as
it can
well
be
as
intimidating,
putting
it's a little scary.
the
And if you
clips
feel
on
that
social media. And so that was part of my responsibility. And that just kind of opened the door for me to determine that, okay, I need to lean more into this. So that's what I ended up doing, just looking for those kinds of positions. And honestly, the journalism really lends itself well to social media, because social media has to be short and tight, and so does television journalism, especially now that people have shorter attention spans. They're not going to sit through your documentary style, piece, unless it's really good. But the majority of people are watching video for 6 seconds. And so this is an opportunity to take what I know from journalism, from video, and marry it and put it online.
Awesome. Sorry about that interruption. That was weird. Did you all see that?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. That was scary. So what exactly is a social media strategist?
For me, what I'm doing is, initially I was working with clients in just sort of day-to-day social media, but the longer you do that, the more you realize you really have to help with long-term goals, and seeing what kind of content they want to put out, what spaces they want to be in. And so for me, the strategy of it all is really thinking a high view, thinking long-term, and taking a look at the kind of content that they're currently producing, and how can we repurpose that, or can we redo it? Can we move them in a different direction? So I'm really looking at strategic goals and initiatives, and sitting down and really working on, who do you want to be online, and what is your voice? Not doing as much sort of day-to-day content for clients. I tend to I'm kind of leaning in the direction now of sitting down with someone and putting together a whole package for them, and saying, these are the types of things you should post, these are the days you should post it, this is what you should say, and really working with them from a bigger view, and then they can take notes from that and work on their day-to-day stuff.
Okay. So what are some, you know, we spoke to journalists, and we all know that, there's so many jobs in the media field, that, when we spoke to journalists, we learned that, they have some journalists do all of their work by themselves. Other journalists work with a team. For a social media strategist, what are some of the upsides and downsides of being a social media strategist?
I would say the upside, I mean, I work currently, I am working with a social media team, but I have the project that I work on is pretty much just me. So, if you're a person that is an independent worker, or if you flourish really well in that space, then this could be, the type of career, the kind of thing that you might want to do, because you have the opportunity to work one-on-one with clients, and work on the kind of content that they want to put out. That, for me, that's a bonus, because I do well if I can have just a one-on-one conversation with you and really work to put together what you want to say. I would say the downside of that, though, also sometimes you do need help, and you have to acknowledge that you need help, especially if you're talking about a client that needs social media on all platforms. There are a lot of people who flourish on Facebook and do really well on Twitter, or folks who are video heavy and they might do better on Instagram or TikTok. But then when you start working with clients who want to be on everything, then you do need the help. So there can be a downside of trying to do it all yourself, because it's tough to master everything. And sometimes you might even need somebody that's a little younger, who is a little bit more plugged into some of the newer platforms, like TikTok. Like, I'm on TikTok, I'm a lurker, but I'm not out here making the level of TikTok videos that other people make. So you do need to be collaborative in the space as well. It's a great field if you are an independent worker, but if there are projects that get bigger or require more time, then you do have to look for collaborative areas as well.
So what is the learning curve for being a social media strategist? Because I'm not sure if they're teaching it in school. Do you have to do most of the learning on your own?
I think for me, for me, the sort of the blessing in how the education that I have and how we, learn sort of the field of broadcast journalism is that everything that I've done it's been a connecting thread to the next thing. So having learned, I don't know that, I know that there are programs out there that will teach you social media, and there are master's level programs as well that will teach you social. But I think for me, just sort of taking the skills that I learned from being a broadcast journalist and learning, writing and how to work under deadline pressure and those kinds of things. And also just the small things of being observant and, watching things and all of the tiny sort of skills that you learn along the way about journalism, weaving all of that together really helps with social media. So I'm looking for the same sort of things that you would think about like ethics and making sure that you have sources and not running with something that you haven't researched. It's the same thing on social media as it is in the traditional media space.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I'm not, this field seems so new to me. I'm not really familiar with social media strategy. I haven't really partaken in that myself. But I was also wondering along the same lines, like what is a general day for you? Like how do you interact with your clients? How do you interact with the social media space? Like what does a day look like for you?
So for my day job, the day for me is taking a look at in the morning, just sort of looking at what's trending. You want to make sure, and this is just, I think, a tenet of journalism as well. If there's something that is trending, and if there's any way that you can make that relatable for your audience, then you want to do a story on it, or you want to somehow incorporate a hashtag or figure out how you can kind of jump on that trending train, so to speak, to show your relevancy, but to also show that you're following sort of the times, if it makes sense. You don't want to jump on every trend, but so I'm looking for what's trending, what people are talking about. I'm looking at, the things that we posted previously, like the day before. Is there any additional feedback, or what's the public saying about those things? I'm also taking a look at the priorities from coming down from people, above me, making sure that the folks who are in charge, who say, these are the things that we want you to talk about, this is the stuff that we want you to cover. We make sure that that gets done. And throughout the day, we're just, also planning ahead. You can plan ahead as much as possible. I think is planning ahead as much as possible is important in social, but you also have to remember that when you start planning too far ahead, that you miss things. So it's good to have a calendar. It's good to have a goal, a target of something that you want to talk about, but also realize that you need to be flexible and nimble. As a consultant, my day is a little bit different because usually those companies or those organizations have come to me and said, this is what we have going on. For example, I worked with a client that they do a conference every year. And so my responsibility is to so many months out before the conference, to create a buzz and to remind people to register and to sort of tease what's happening at the conference. So in that case, I am looking at a calendar and looking far in advance of things that I can talk about. And you also want to look for, I'm looking for holidays. The internet has created a holiday for everything, like coffee day, pizza day, cheeseburger day. So we're looking at, how can we make those kinds of things, not to be silly, but how can we do that? How can we make it interesting? For example, on the government side of things, it may not seem like it makes sense to do popcorn day on a military site, but we have tons of pictures of service members who are in their downtime watching movies and eating popcorn. So how can we take that photo and make it, say it's a Thursday, it's a throwback Thursday image, but it's also National Popcorn Day. We can make that an engaging post by asking people, what kind of popcorn do you like? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite snack when you watch a movie? And so those are the kinds of things that you sort of look for throughout the day as well.
That's strategy. All right. So so you've been in the media for more than 20 years now. So what has been like the ultimate highlight of your career? What would you say?
Oh, wow. A few years ago, I went to the Golden Globes. It's not something that I, how in your head, you're like, oh, I would love to go one day to go to the Oscars, but it's like, well, how does that apply to me? Why would I be there kind of thing? But it's a lofty goal and you sort of throw it out in the universe. But this ended up being an opportunity after I had thought about wanting to be on the red carpet at the Oscars. This was an opportunity for me to be at the Golden Globes. Probably didn't really make a whole lot of sense to the taxpayer because it was under, it was a government contract, but when you go, you have to make it make sense. So when you go to stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're interviewing people who, so what we did was we did our research. All of the people who were nominated, we looked to see who had a military background, who was a military kid, who, if there was a big movie that was nominated that had a military tie, we looked for that. We sent myself as the producer and then another an airman who was uniformed. So a lot of times people are more inclined to talk to you when they see you, are a service member and you're wearing the uniform. And so those are the ways, and that was also part of that Know Your Meal campaign to show these are cool things that you can do, as a member of the military, and also because we're talking to people who, celebrities who value the military or who have a message for the military or who themselves have served or their parents served, then we were trying to tie all that together, and it ended up being, they're sending us to the Golden Globes.
That's
so
awesome.
that was a cool thing. And also, you make it make sense. So anytime I have to go on travel, particularly going from the East Coast to the West Coast, we always find other stories. So we always make sure that if we've got to be out there, we're going to be out there for a few days and we're going to go film something else as well. So
cool.
That was a cool experience.
That sounds cool. So what's most challenging about this work?
I think probably the same as anyone else that's working in a creative space, just making sure that you're staying on top of what's happening and that you're being as creative as possible, and that you're coming up with the kinds of stories that people would be interested in reading or watching. I think especially now with being in the pandemic, it's been a little bit tough because we are working from home, and everything that we're doing now is online, and just trying to, shift our workflow to fit that pandemic, working from home kind of space has been, and I won't say so much difficult, but it's changed the landscape of the stuff we talk about. We spent pretty much most of last year focusing on COVID and on the government response to COVID. And then even from clients that I was taking on personally through my company, everything was COVID related. So clients that I had previously done work for, everything just shifted. So that, trying to sort of keep your creativity, but also remain serious because it's a very serious topic. Sometimes that can be not so much challenging, but it's just like, wow, you would like to maybe be a little bit more creative or talk about some other things, but you have to address the moment.
Mhm. So your company, what's your company's name again?
Dot Connector.
Dot Connector. Okay, just want to get that little plug in there.
Mhm.
So how did your education prepare you for this work?
Oh wow. Interesting. It's funny, I don't want to say that I like fell into things, because I do believe that things happen for on purpose and for divine reasons. But even in high school, my English teacher saw something in me and was like, would you like to edit the newspaper? And I was just like, okay. I had never expressed really any interest about that, but it turned into, would you like to be the newspaper editor? And I did that. I did yearbook. I did a lot of things that put me in the space of writing and creativity. And then in selecting a college, I honestly looked at Syracuse because I was interested in the basketball team, and not playing for the basketball team, but going to games. And so I just went for a visit, and in the process of going up there, realized on my tour that the Newhouse School was the number one school of journalism in the nation. I mean, of course, the people at Northwestern probably they like to argue differently, but we are. And so there was just the getting into the Newhouse School was, I didn't know at the time, but that was a big deal. A lot of people were working to test to get into Newhouse, and being able to be in there from freshman year all the way to senior year, and being able to just being in other organizations, everything, just kind of everything that I either chose or was chosen to do has put me in that space. And then even when you try to fight it, in other organizations where I'm like, okay, I'll join the health committee or I'll do something differently, something different, people still see that thing in you and they're like, oh, would you write our social media messages? Or
Yeah.
would you like to be on the information team or the communication team? So everything that I do kind of falls into that space. I think it's all prepared me for it.
Cool. Well, at MCM, we educate our community on media production. What are some of the most important considerations you make when producing content?
I would say just making sure that it makes sense for your audience. Every organization or every client that you work with has some sort of audience, and even if it's a new organization or a new social media page, there is an intended audience. So you want to make sure that you're doing stuff that makes sense. I think where a lot of companies and brands get in trouble is when they start trying to do what everyone else does, and copying, oh well, this group had success with this video, we should do something like that, and then you end up turning off your fan base or your followers, or people look at you like, well, why are you trying to do that, or why are you trying to be, everybody can't be Wendy's on social media, right? Like if you follow Wendy's, they're cutting edge, they do a lot of clapbacks, they talk a lot about McDonald's and other places, but it makes sense for them because that's the voice that they have developed and curated over the years. Everybody else can't do that, or at least can't, you can't start out one way and then make a hard turn because it just turns off your followers. So I would just say that, you want to be creative and you want to find new ways to be creative, but you don't want to do it in any way that is offensive to your followers or to the community in general.
What's some advice that you can offer people who want to get into being a social media strategist? What are some things they need to be aware of?
You want to be aware of news. I mean, I'm always surprised at people that I meet who, the day is going along and they didn't know that a certain thing was happening, or they didn't know that this was a day of some event or an anniversary. And if you miss that, if you miss what's happening in the news, you run the risk of putting out a tweet or putting out a message that the optics could be very bad for you if you're not thinking about, well, this is the anniversary of such and such, or something happened in the news this morning and now we're tweeting about it or we're putting it on social media and we missed that part of the story. So it looks like, we're doing something counter. So I would say just as a solid piece of advice for anybody really is to just stay in the know. You don't have to be first for everything. A lot of journalists are really into that, being first, but you don't necessarily have to be first. You want to be right. And you want to make sure that you're not putting something out that is wrong or that's offensive or that isn't properly sourced. I would say those are probably the main two things. And then also just be aware, pay attention to things around you, read things that are from multiple points of view so you can find out what, people are saying. I love to just sort of, kind of scroll through Twitter and see what's trending and just kind of see what people are talking about and what the responses are to what people are talking about. And it doesn't require a lot of time, but you just want to kind of look around and see what's out there before you make the leap in what you want to say.
So it seems like a social media strategist is basically strategizing about the social media, like reading what's out there, learning what's out there, and then using what's out there to propel an agenda forward. What would you say about social media strategy that most people might not think of? Like what is it that most people might not know about social media strategists?
I think it's really, we are a part of news, we're a part of PR, we're a part of marketing. It's sort of all wrapped in one. Particularly, and that was an area that I kind of had to learn coming from a journalism background where you just sort of report the facts. Mm-hmm. Then working with clients who are either the government or companies or, various brands, nonprofits, things like that. Everyone has, like you said, their agenda or whatever it is that they want to promote. And not that you're promoting lies, but it's from a very different angle and a very different perspective than just reporting what happened that day or, reporting the news. One of the things that I like to do is I love to do live event coverage because that's very much like the news. If I'm someplace and I go live, just a live stream, or I'm just doing a live tweeting and giving updates of what's happening, that's very much like being in a newsroom situation, and I'm not putting any kind of spin on it. I've taken a picture. This is what just happened. These are who the people are. I like to do that. And it's very interactive, and I think the audience likes it as well.
Cool. We have a youth media academy for students 11 to 17 years old. Do you have any advice for young media makers who are, they're still young, they have a lot of life to live and a lot of opportunities to gain? If they wanted to be a social media, and now is a different time. When we went to school, we both, Yolanda and I went to Syracuse at the SI Newhouse School of Public Communications. But when we went to school, like social media, who would have thought that, we would be at this point, right? Like I'm dating us, like this was before 2000 and, the internet was still in its infancy. But for students, today, like my little cousin, I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? He was like a YouTuber. And I'm like, okay, that's possibly a good career choice. I don't know, So what do you have to say to people like that age who are coming up? Like you said, you were on the newspaper, the editor of the newspaper at your school. You were also on the yearbook. I did the yearbook at my school. I went to Northwestern for a summer program, but it was all radio, TV, film, right? So for people who are interested in social media, what would they need to do starting now to make them get to where you are?
I would honestly say tell those young people to hire us because they're the ones that know everything. I think though that their lifespan has been all online, all screens, all digital. So they're at an advantage in that area. I mean, we have come through, tapes and having to travel with tapes. And they're in we're in a completely different space. But I mean, there are advantages for us though, because we do remember how to do those things, and we do remember the older vintage way of doing stuff. But nothing beats the basic skills of writing, reading, the creativity. Nothing beats those skills. So, and you're going to need to have that. It's very easy, and a lot of companies kind of, I think, take a cheap way in saying, oh, well, we'll just get an intern to do social media. But that's not really a job. Like, an intern can learn, but that's not really an area. It is a job. And so I think that it's important for young people to understand that you still need those basic English, writing, journalism type skills to do the job. They're already leaps and bounds ahead of us because they get it. They get the editing. They know how to do it from their phones. They've always been attached to some sort of device, whether it be a video game or a phone, a tablet, something. They've always been attached to that. So they have that advantage, but the real core of just judgment and journalism and common sense and the things that, when you're sitting in a newsroom and you hear a story and you say to yourself, well, who paid for that? Let's follow the money. Where is that? Where did that originate? Or who said that? Or let's go find out who said that first, or who did this first. Like, those kinds of things. Those are the things that you don't know when you're young. And so you do have to teach young people those things so that they're aware of, yes, I can put together a video, and yes, I can throw it up online, but how can I make it better by understanding those rules of journalism, and even just rules of just standard video, like proper lighting, audio, all of those things. Those are all important. So I think it really does take the people working together, the young and the older and the old, working together to really get it done. And it's a really, just as someone who has been the young person in an office, and now I'm older, so now I'm working with younger people, and I've been the old person with a group of millennials. It's an interesting experience to be in that scenario with all kinds of age ranges. And I think it's important for companies to have that. You still need that person who's 40 plus who can tell you about TV in the 80s. Or who can tell you about some event, baby Jessica falling in the well, and how that impacted, TV, and what the 24-hour news cycle, how it became that, and how, there was a time when there wasn't 24-hour TV. There was a time when the TV went off, you have to be able to explain that. And I think it's great for all of the, age ranges to work together and to learn from each other.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think we all should work together. That's awesome. So what gets you motivated to do this work? Like, what, on a personal level, what motivates you?
It's fun. I like the immediacy of the reaction. It's very much like, I would imagine how, people who are in theater say that they like to be in theater because they get the audience reaction quickly. When you put up a message online, if you've got, people following that hashtag or people following your account, the response is immediate. I mean, there upsides to that and downsides, because if you make a mistake, or if you say something wrong, or if you have to correct it, or if you tweet out a link that a letter is missing and the link is dead, people see it immediately. So you have to make sure that double and triple check that what you're about to post is correct. But I do like the immediate response of it.
How do you deal with your audience? What's that like? With that immediate response? Yeah, I'm always afraid to post things on social media. I don't want to offend people. I don't want people, judging me. But how do you do that? Like, well, how do you deal with that immediate response?
So, managing a government site is different because you cannot really say a lot. Like you can't, I mean, maybe people who are in leadership positions, who are maybe known to be controversial can do that. But if you're someone who's, managing a government agency site, you want to be helpful. You don't want to be rude. So the management on that end is a little different. There are some agencies that do respond to their audience pretty quickly, and are there, they use their social media like a customer service sort of clearinghouse. For us, it's on the Department of Defense side, it's very sort of one way. We're pushing out our messaging, and occasionally if people have questions about something and if you can answer it, we can. When working with organizations or private clients, it's a little bit different, because I can have a little bit more leeway of answering questions, or I can find the answer for them quickly and then get someone to either tell me what they want to put in the tweet, or I can just have them respond directly. I think the audience prefers that people are engaging, because you want to know that it's not just some robot tweeting, and just pushing messages out. You really want to have someone who's available, who can talk to the audience. I think people like that. And especially if, you're talking about like companies that provide a service as well, to actually have someone from a help desk that can, apologize for your issue and be able to help you and really handle it, I think is a big deal. And we've seen just with the growth of social media, that's what a lot of people have social media accounts for, is, they hop on Twitter to be able to say, such and such airline lost my bag, or, that they're using it as a customer service reference.
So what are some of your pet peeves about when it comes to producing media? Like, what don't you like to see, or what are things that bother you that other people do that just you don't think that producing media should be?
I would say just, I'm pretty old school in that I like bad audio. Like, you can kind of sit through a video where the video is a little sketchy, but if you can't hear it, or if you can't access a caption or something for it, like bad audio really drives me nuts. I'm also a stickler for lighting. I just like for people to be well lit. Particularly, as a Black person, I'm always like, you better put that light on her correctly, kind of thing, to make sure that everybody looks right. I've always been the kind of person that, as a producer or even as a field producer, I just like to make sure, how sometimes you watch TV and it's like, why did they interview that person? They're the craziest looking person or whatever.
Yeah.
Why didn't they tell them that their hair was sticking straight up? Like, I've been that person. Like, I worked on a project with a group of kids who when I was on Women in Film and Video Board, we did a high school program called Image Makers, where we were teaching high schoolers how to make public service announcement. And I did this for years. And one of the shoots we were on, this poor guy was like shiny, and I was like, I can't let this man go out like this. So I like got the powder out of my purse and I powdered him, because I was like, I don't want people, you want to be representative of what is actually happening.
Yeah.
You don't want to make something, make it up or make it like a professional type of shoot. But you also, if you're making a PSA, that's a little bit different than grabbing somebody off the street for witness reaction or something. This video was going to live and possibly be shown on TV. So I was like, I want to make sure that, the people look right. So I'm an optics person. I just like to make sure things look right. And the same with the messaging that goes out, making sure that we're not, you don't want to tweet something on this, on the same day that some major tragedy happens. It just looks bad,
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. Okay. What is one of your go-to techniques when producing video? What is something that you always do to make it look, well, you just told us that you make sure the optics are right, but is there anything else that you do to make sure that your videos turn out right, or that your work is polished?
Probably, for me, I like to let the video breathe, and it doesn't have to be wall to wall talking or wall to wall voiceover. I think that the visual and the background or the B-roll, whatever sound you have, I think is really important to let the audience get a feel for the scenery or the environment. I like documentaries, and so I will sit through a documentary, but I know that a lot of people don't, like that. But I do prefer a style that lets a story build and, lets people kind of come along for the ride. But, just as someone who has to look at analytics, I know that a lot of people it's like 6 seconds and then they're out. So, just having to learn to make sure that I'm putting the content, the best content first, especially on when working, like for instance, working with the DoD client, people they love military dogs and they love explosions. So we've learned that that's kind of what our audience likes, and we've learned to kind of work with that. If you have to start a video off with the bang, literally, then that's what you have to do to sort of grab the audience. I think it's a matter of what your eye likes, but then also learning what works well with your audience. So those would probably be the sort of tricks or things that I would sort of lean to.
Okay, cool. Well, that was my last question, but I want to open it up to the audience right now. I know there's something in the chat that I just saw. How can our audience contact you on social? Like, what are your social handles?
Yeah, you can. So probably the easiest thing is my website. I'll just put it in there. It's just my name.com, and it has all of the social media buttons on there. I'm on everything.
Of course. So, do we have any questions from our group here? Any questions for? Oh, Marsha B has a question. Marsha, turn on your camera and let us see you.
Hey there.
Oh, Jeff has a question too. Jeff, can you just hold on a second? Marsha had her hand raised.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Miss Arrington. How are you?
Good. Hi, Marsha.
Good. I have a question. What tools and organizers do you use, and would you recommend for a future social media strategist? Or what organization tools do you use to get you through the day and keep you organized?
So I use Hootsuite.
Okay.
It also depends on the organization and what if I'm working with the client, what they've set up. And it used to be that you had to use something like Hootsuite because the various social platforms didn't have proper management, but now they do. So I like the look of Hootsuite, but now Facebook has the Creator Studio. And because now that Facebook owns Instagram, you can toggle between Facebook and Instagram in the Creator Studio. So if you have a piece of content that you want to put on both, you can go from Facebook scheduling and then click the Instagram button and you can schedule on Instagram as well. And then Twitter they now own, we used to use TweetDeck as our workaround to schedule content on Twitter, but now they own TweetDeck. So I use TweetDeck to schedule for Twitter. It would be great to just kind of have one thing. I mean, I know that there are other options out there, but sometimes the way that things are set up and the way the algorithms work, the companies really prefer you to use their scheduler. So that's what I do.
And what do you use for editing your videos? What's the best software that you find useful, especially because I'm familiar with Jackie Aina. I follow her, so that's really cool that you got a chance to work with her and do something for her. But what do you use to edit videos, and what's the best process for you?
So the editor that I worked with on the Jackie piece, I believe he used Adobe, I think.
Yeah, that's what we use. Okay.
But I've used Final Cut before. I guess fortunately, I don't have to do a whole lot of editing on my end. A lot of it, a lot of what I'm doing is writing and sourcing out, like curating content or working with someone like, in a team unit type of thing to go out and to shoot something, and then working more as a producer. If I have some video that I've shot on my phone or something that I've been able to download, I can piece it together through like iMovie or, just using the native app on my phone. But I think the primary source of editing that we use just sort of day to day is an Adobe product.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Jeff?
Hi, good evening.
Thank you.
Listen, this has been really wonderful. And what I want to know is, do you offer a 1 hour free consultation,
I
or are
do.
you for hire?
Both. I do have I have a free like a phone call option. So if you go to my website and you click on the hire me area, there's a calendar app there where you can pick a day. And there are various types of phone calls there. There's just sort of the initial call to talk about what your needs are. And then there's also the call, like if you already know what you want, we can talk through that, or if there's an option if you want to get a video made or something like that. So definitely.
All right, well, look for me. I'm coming.
Okay, thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Marsha?
I do. Yes, let's just say that you curate content and you're working with others. Do you find that some colors are better to work with than others, or does it depend on the client, or is there like an overall color that'll just bring the people in?
A color, you mean like for branding?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh wow, that's a whole other thing. I know that like there's a whole field of science related to that in terms of, people who use red, like your Coca-Cola, your Toyotas. I think for my work, I haven't done too much on that angle, because usually by the time I'm working with someone, they're already a brand and they've already selected their color. So a lot of time we're working within what they do. For instance, if it's, like military, by and large, it's going to be like blue, gray, like those kinds of colors. I've done some work with a political group. They're blue as well. Blue and I think sometimes orange. And then I've worked with a medical client, and their colors are like a teal sort of color. So a lot of cool colors. I just know, I think it also depends on the audience, so I think it would just be a matter of researching the age group and the demographic of the audience you're trying to reach, because there's some brands that do use, the bold red. Then there's some that use pink, if they're trying for folks who are trying to reach women or women of a particular age. So yeah, there's a whole field of study about that. But I would definitely say, definitely take a look at what the research is before you jump out there with the color.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, this was awesome. Great way to spend a Friday. Thank you so much, Yolanda Arrington, for joining us at our Pro Talks. The end of the year is coming. Our next Pro Talk is going to be with Charles Robinson. He's a reporter from Maryland Public Television. So please come back, check the Eventbrite page, look at the catalog, get ready for the new year. This is our last Pro Talks for the season. So thank you all for coming out. This was wonderful. And I hope you all have a happy holiday and enjoy your evening. Bye.
Thank you all.